Hello Stampers, Kelly Acheson at stampingup.com coming to you from Menasha, Wisconsin. Today I have a very cool card. I ran across a little problem actually, and that's how this card came about. So I have a member of my team whose grandson is in the hospital. He's taken a turn for the worse. He's around 7 years old, and it just, of course, touches your heart when you hear about this, right? So when something like this happens within my team, I put a great big call out for cards because that's what we do, right? We bring smiles with cards. So today I put out a call for some Get Well cards for Mason. And I realized as I was going through all the cards that I have, and believe me, I have hundreds of them on hand, that I do not have a Get Well card that would be appropriate for a boy around the age of 7. What's up with that? So I came up with an idea and I'm going to share it with you. And I thought as long as I'm doing that, I'm also going to explain to you how I design a card, because there's a lot of things that go through my head when I get out a stamp set or a bundle of products and start creating with them. So I'm going to touch on that a little bit too, and show you a little stepped up version and how easy it is to take your card from, oh, that's nice, to wow, great card. All right, so I decided to use the Sea of Textures stamp set. I decided this was very appropriate for a boy card, right? And then I pulled out my Healing Hugs, which is my go-to for Get Well because I love the greetings in here. Okay, let's get started. I'm going to bring in my cardstock here. So it looks like I have a whole big mess going on, but actually all of these are scraps. So I've got Grapefruit Grove, Coastal Cabana, Tranquil Tide, Whisper White, and Crumb Cake. These are all for the dies. Then I've got a piece of our watercolor paper that is 4 by 5 1/4, a piece of Whisper White that is 5 by 3 3/4. I've got 2 pieces of Coastal Cabana here. One of them is 4 by 5 1/4, and the other one is 3 7/8 by 5 1/8. And then a Crumb Cake card base, 5 1/2 by 8 1/2. You can always find all of these dimensions on my blog, and you can find that link if you're on YouTube watching this video. Under the video, you'll see a little button that says see more. And if you click on that, you're going to find all kinds of links. Links to my blog, a complete shopping list, and you'll find all of these details in one place. So it just makes it easier if you want to recreate the cards that I'm making. So I have folded my Crumb Cake card base in half. And I think the first thing I want to do is bring in my Whisper White layer. Let's see, did I have, okay, that's Crumb Cake. This is Whisper White, yep. And here's how I created my card. So this is how I start designing. Once I decide on what stamp set or bundle of products I want to use, I get that out, obviously. And then I bring out all my dies that go with that set. So here comes all the Thinlits. And then I get out my stamp set and I mount, whoops, all the stamps. So I've got all the stamps from the Sea of Textures mounted and a couple of the greetings that I want to use from the Healing Hugs. This just makes everything easier for me once I start going. I don't have to mess around with getting more blocks and, you know, seeing this, that, and the other thing. So the first thing I decided I wanted to do was I wanted to have this little sea of fish on the inside layer. I just thought that would be really cool. You guys know how I feel about inside layers. When you open that card, the party should not end. So we're going to decorate up this inside and make it pretty spectacular. I'm going to take this little sea of fish die and I'm going to run that through my Big Shot, and I'll be right back. And here comes our sea of fish, and isn't that just adorable? Look at all those little fish. Okay, then I decided that I wanted another layer under this white layer. So we're going to put this on the inside and make the inside really spectacular. I think this little boy has been through a lot and he deserves a card that is just smashing. I'm going to bring in my ink colors here. I've got Coastal Cabana, Tranquil Tide, Rich Razzleberry, and Crumb Cake. My greeting is going to be stamped with Rich Razzleberry. I'm just going to stamp that Get Well Soon right there. And then I thought it'd look kind of neat to bring that netting stamp in with some crumb cake and add that right over here to the side. That's a pretty cool inside for a card, right? Okay, let's get this put together and then we'll move on to the front. And we'll add this. I always like to use liquid glue for those of you that may be new. And what do you think about this inside? That's pretty cool, right? I think this is going to turn out really neat. I'm excited about it. Okay, next. What I did is I took all of these scraps and stamped when needed and die cut. So my octopus, I'm going to stamp him on this white scrap. Oh, and then I need another scrap of white. That one wasn't quite big enough because I also wanted to use the Grapefruit Grove and stamp this piece of coral. So we'll get that stamped right away. Okay, we have both of those done. And then I'm going to die cut a bunch of images. So I've got this little coral and my netting that's so cool. So what I recommend when you have a set like this with all of these different dies, I really recommend that you just die cut. Figure out your color palette and then start die cutting the images and just die cut, die cut, die cut, so you'll have a whole pile of stuff to choose from when you go to start putting your card together. So we've got all these neat little things going on here. There's a die for this, there's a die for this. I'm gonna do some sand dollars out of the grapefruit and the crumb cake. So I'm gonna get all these die cut and I'll be right back. Okay, you guys, I'm going to put my dies away so I don't lose any of them. Be careful with them because it is heartbreaking if you happen to misplace one and you can't find it. So now I've got all these little bits and pieces that I'm going to be using. And oh, how fun. Okay, we're gonna do our background. Now, this is called a watercolor wash. I'm gonna bring in an aqua painter and I'm going to bring in just, this is an old embellishment lid, and I have Coastal Cabana ink here. So I've got about 2 drops of Coastal Cabana ink. And I'm going to get my watercolor paper wet. So I'm squeezing my aqua painter. You can see the water coming out of it. Watercolor paper is meant to be wet, and it works better if you get it all nice and wet before you start doing anything to it. Now I'm going to squeeze some water, just a couple drops in here to dilute this re-inker just a little bit. And I love a watercolor wash because look at how that just spreads. It's so, so cool. Now you can wipe this around, you can dab it and let it spread, whatever kind of a look you'd like to get. And I like to practice first on some watercolor paper scraps that I keep. You know, when you cut the edges off and stuff, I'll practice a little bit to see what I like. Because my brush is so wet, I'm going to bring in a tissue here and kind of wipe it off on that. Usually I would just go back and forth on the paper until it's doesn't have any color anymore, but I'm just going to wipe it off on here because it's so wet. Okay, you have to let this dry. If you don't have time to let it dry, you can bring in your heat tool and heat it up to make it dry. Now I've already got one sitting here waiting for me that I did before I started the video. The other thing I like to do when I'm doing kind of like a water scene, which is this is supposed to be kind of under the sea, is I like to take that aqua painter and I'm going to squeeze some water into that end. Okay, so I've got water coming out now, so it's pretty wet, and I'm just going to tap it on my finger to get some water droplets onto my layer. And what that'll do is as they dry, they will leave water spots on the watercolor paper, so it'll kind of make the color lighter where those spots have hit the watercolor wash. Okay, and you can kind of see it happening. I hope you can see that in the camera because it is really cool, and especially for like water. Not like water, but water. You know what I mean. Okay, I am going to just dab this off a little bit because we need to keep going. Okay, now you can really see it. Check that out. Isn't that cool? I love that look. All right, next thing I want to do, this still feels a little damp. You don't ever want to stamp on damp paper because your ink will bleed. So we're going to hit it with the heat tool just a little bit to help it along. Now we're going to stamp on here. And I am taking this long leafy looking thing that I think it's kind of like seaweed growing from the bottom of the ocean. Oops, we're not going to do that first. Hang on, I got a little confused. I want to put my sandy ground down here. So I'm going to take crumb cake ink and we're going to stamp this image. And this is a really interesting image. I wasn't really quite sure what it was supposed to be when I first got the stamp set, but then I started playing with it, and notice how I'm just stamping over what I've done already. And I'm just going to keep stamping this until I get the depth of color that I want for the bottom of the ocean. I feel like I need a little bit more there. I think that looks really good. And isn't that a neat look? So, and it's pretty easy, right? Now we're going to stamp with this seaweed looking thing. Remember when you're stamping on watercolor paper, you have to give it good pressure because the paper is texturized. And if you don't press hard when you're stamping, your images don't, they're not complete. I guess that's a good way to put it. Okay, so we've got lots of seaweed coming up here from the side. And then I decided that I wanted to come in with some, this little coral. And I'm going to put that right over here on the side. And I'm just going to stamp that again. Look at how nice and dark that is. You can't even tell that I stamped over it, but I wanted it to be very dark. Before I go any further, we're going to stamp the greeting that I wanted to put on the front, and this is in Rich Razzleberry, and I've got the greeting, sending you healing vibes, and that turned out great. Now we're going to start assembling everything. So I think that, yep, this is going to look great right here. Now you may want to get out your sponge and add some glue with it, but I'm just going to do this because it's going to be covered up. My glue will get covered up any glue that's sticking out with my octopus. And my octopus is going up on some dimensionals. Oh, and I have to tell you guys too, I almost forgot. I have an online class using this Tranquil Textures bundle. So the framelits, the designer series paper, the Sea of Texture stamp set. There's a whole suite of products that goes with this little octopus set. I have an online class that's amazing. It includes 8 cards and I think a bonus card, so 9 total cards, private videos that show you exactly how to make each one of them. Each one has a video. You'll find my online classes. I'll put them in the description under the video on YouTube, or if you're on my blog, I'll give you a link to them. They're pretty cool if you want to check out the details. So now see all of these little elements that I just die cut. I'm just kind of bringing in here, and I'm going to set them around to see, you know, where do I want to place them. And I think that's the easiest way to design with a stamp set and framelits like this, or thinlits, because you can just kind of set everything around. That looks so cool, doesn't it? Then my little octopus is going to go right up here. So let's get these glued down. And this card looks like it was a lot of work and it was really hard, but you can clearly see that it's been a pretty simple card. Once you have everything die cut, then you can just kind of go crazy with it. Oops, I've got glue on my finger. That didn't stick very good. Get some more glue out of there. See, I'm just kind of popping everything down behind the image that I just placed. It's a good way to do it. I didn't get enough glue on this hand. I do not want Mason's card falling apart when he gets it, right? That would be not cool. Okay, there we go. And then I also love this copper trim because you can pull this apart and it looks like netting, and I always love to use it with the Sea of Texture stamp set because I think it's just so cool. See how that's coming apart? It's kind of like a tube in there, and it is a metallic copper thread. It's very neat. I'm just going to keep pulling it out here I feel like I've got a piece that's substantial enough to do what I want with it. There we go. Isn't that neat? All right. I think I'm just going to kind of set that right in here. Now, one thing I wanted to show you before I finish this card, this is just another kind of a design element, is to take this and put it on our card front and show you that yes, this is a nice card, right? But wouldn't it be better with a colored layer underneath this watercolor layer and then on our crumb cake? That's how you can take your cards and make them just a notch better. So let me take this paper. I'm going to trim it so that I can put a Coastal Cabana layer under here, and I'll be right back. Now I just took this piece and I trimmed it down to 5 1/8 by 3 7/8. Now I'm going to bring in this Coastal Cabana layer, and we're going to put this together. I think you're really going to like this, and you're going to see just how much that adds to the card, having that extra layer under there. I have always, since the day I started stamping, I have been a big layer person. Like, I love layers. And you can have a really simple card, and if you have several layers on there, you really make it much more substantial or nicer than if you just have one layer. Doesn't that look nice? Yeah, it really does add a lot. Okay, now what are we going to do with this? I think I'm just going to bring this in here, and I'm going to kind of have it going off the side there. And I am going to grab a piece of tape and just tape it down right there. It's not really going anyplace. And then maybe a mini glue dot is a good way to help this stick a little bit. And I'll just put one right there because you're not going to see it. There we go. Oops, I have one of my hairs in here. Hang on. Mason does not need that. And then we'll put this octopus on and I'll show you the whole finished product. You guys make sure you check out that online class. I also have some beautiful cards made that don't even have this octopus in there. Those sand dollars are so, so pretty. Here comes our little octopus. And here we go. Fantastic. Don't forget to stamp up your envelope. I just don't want to share this address. I've already got my envelope address, but don't forget to stamp up your envelope to make that look really cool. Right, you guys, if you would like to order any of these supplies, you can head right over to my blog at www.stampabove.com. If you click right up here in the right-hand corner, that's going to take you right there. You'll find a complete shopping list, all the dimensions, everything I used, and some still photographs that you can look at if you'd like to recreate this. Make sure you use this host code if you're placing an order, if your order's under $150. If it's over $150, don't use the host code. You'll get your own perks from Stampin' Up. You will get perks from me whether your order is under $150 or over $150. I appreciate all of them. And I want to thank you guys so much for taking a little bit of time out of your day to spend it with me. Click down here, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and have yourselves a wonderful weekend. Bye-bye.